first discussion is about semiconductors and chip manufacturing in the country, which is a recent initiative by the government and has immense scope. The second discussion pertains to grassroots level innovations that are specific to rural development and social sector. I would now like to call upon our esteemed panelists, Colonel Anurag Awasthi, Vice President, India Electronics and Semiconductor Association and Interim CEO of Electropreneur Park, Delhi, Dr. Anamika Dey, CEO, Jian, Dr. Sapna Poti, Director, Strategic Alliance Division, Office of Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi Nanandla, Joint Secretary, Agriculture and Farmers Welfare Department, Government of India. Please note that all our panel discussions and plenary sessions are being live telecasted on the YouTube channel for Bharati Institute of Public Policy, and we have our virtual viewers joining us online as well. I would request Colonel Anurag Awasthi to moderate the session. Thank you.
All right. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are all live streamed insofar as this panel discussion is concerned. Well, all I can tell you is, firstly, I feel like a pigeon among the cats. I wonder if my professors understand. Look at the gender equality, 3:1, so I'm so happy. Please give us a big hand for that. All right. Having said that, this is as diverse as it can get. It is actually as diverse it can get. It starts with semiconductors and ESDM scenario of a man who's moved from 28 is in the government to the corporate sector, understands both sides of the coin insofar as policy is concerned and design. Then of course we have the agriculture, then we have the integration of industry, academy and startups, and then we have the grassroots innovations. Just look at the diversity from semiconductors to grassroots innovations. So from 0 to 10, 10 to 0, whichever way, look at the oscillation. Now, I think, firstly, I must thank the Indian School of Business and Bharati Institute of Public Policy for putting this panel together to discuss innovations and technology, tech, essentially. Now, what is being referred to as the Indian Techade, so to say. Now, yesterday, sir had spoken something which I saw online, which said, Sarkar, Samaj or Prachar. These are the three pillars insofar as the policy is concerned, which a lot of people say so. But in our case, possibly, innovations and technology cannot find traction if there are the troika of skilling, the policy and the platforms are not made available. These are the three major issues. The troika is the skilling, policy and platforms in my small little vision. So this in turn, essentially, when you look at the innovations and you look at tech, gives rise to scalability and proliferation. These are the two major issues. Scalability, of course, when it makes business sense, and proliferation, that it goes on to the grassroots level. It starts from top, goes down to the bottom, and they possibly are the basic common goals for any innovation and technology. Now, having said that, I will just introduce myself first. I am the Vice President of India Electronics and Semiconductor Association. I look after all policy related issues, all government related issues, all major issues dealing with the corporates insofar as the ESDM and semiconductor sector is concerned in the country. Drive policy through all states as well as the center and the industry's voice, so on and so forth, insofar as policy making in semiconductors is concerned. And you're all aware that semiconductors is the new oil. It is a no-brainer, and also you're quite aware that semiconductors is more about geopolitics than more about technology. It's all about the monopolistic hegemonies of a couple of countries, supply chain management, chemicals, various other things like packaging, testing, so on and so forth. So I will not go in detail into that. I will dwell on it a little later. So I will now introduce you firstly to the panelists, and I'll request each of them to speak at least 2 minutes or 3 minutes as to what they do, what is their scope of work, and how exactly do they envision their job in times to come. So I'll first call upon Dr. Sapna Poti.
Thank you, and thank you ISP for having us over. I'm from the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. Professor Ajay Sood is the current Principal Scientific Advisor. Dr. Abdul Kalam was the first one. This office largely works with, works on progression of research and innovations in India through institutes, through startups, through, of course, industry and so on. So the division that I head is the Strategic Alliances Division. We work very closely with the industries to see if how industry and academia can work together for any kind of social impact using technologies and using innovation. So that's exactly the role that we play. And we also work with about 10 more countries outside, where most of them are interested in some of the specialists that we have, in terms of AI and ML, for instance, quantum, or it also could be semiconductors and so on. So our role is how to bridge that gap between the countries and make them comfortable to do research and innovation in India.
Wonderful. Dr. Vijay Lakshmi.
Good morning. Am I audible? Yeah. Good morning and namaste. Thank you ISB for giving this opportunity. I'm Dr. N. Vijay Lakshmi. I'm an IAS officer of 1995 batch, having 27 years of experience in public policy making and also implementation. Worked extensively at the grassroots level in the state of Bihar, also at the state level in various departments, and now I'm presently posted in Government of India, Ministry of Agriculture. Presently I'm looking after marketing division in the agriculture department.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Anamika?
Good morning everyone. My name is Dr. Anamika De, and I am the CEO of Gujarat Grassroots Innovation Augmentation Network. So you can call it GYAN as we fondly call it. We basically help innovators who are little or not much educated, but they have done something new. So we complete the value chain, the innovation value chain for them. Right from finding them, because many a times they do not know that that is new, because they have answered an unmet need of the society or their clients or themselves, and then filing patents to getting them into the market, onboarding them, giving them design inputs, getting certifications, testings. So these are the things that I generally do. I also happen to teach at IMA a couple of courses. Basically that also involves into innovation and creativity and entrepreneurship. And the other thing that I do is very different from what I regularly do. I teach agrobiodiversity. So how biodiversity actually helps you to combat climate fluctuations and ensure nutrition security and very different things. So that's how I am involved into this whole innovation ecosystem. Resilience. So that brings also not only economic resilience but also ecological resilience into what I teach and what I learn.
Wonderful. Thank you. So 3 doctors sitting next to me. My God, I'm the only one who's a non-doctor here. Right. So I'll first start with Dr. Sapna. I would want to ask you, ma'am, as to what exactly are your views on the startup culture in India? Now, everybody seems to, you speak with anybody. Like I also, in my charter of duties, I'm the interim CEO of the Electropuna Park, Delhi, and I meet with a lot of young minds who've graduated out of engineering and what have you. And each time I ask them, I said, what are you up to? He says, I want to begin a startup. So there's a culture of startups here. So somewhere down the line, the attrition rate of startups is, you are aware, and all of us are aware, is very, very high. But what are your views on the startup culture as it exists in India? Or do you think there are too many incubators who are wanting to do all this? And how do you propose we galvanize all these efforts as one, under one body, which looks after this entire culture or possibly becomes a repository of knowledge as well as the furtherance of the startup culture?
So I think there are pluses and minuses when it comes to startups. I always like to think positive. So let me start with the pluses. During the pandemic, if you realize, we actually got saved because of a lot of startups who came up with so many innovations. They lined them up and they said, you know, we have ventilators, we have oxygen concentrators, we have masks, we have PPEs and so on. Where would we have been without these startups during the pandemic if we didn't have them, right? So almost all of them, we are obliged to them today because of the quick manufacturing, the quick thinking, the quick innovations that they came up with. And of course, they were supported by a lot of institutes and so on, but there were quite a few who did not have any incubators or institutes. Let me give you an example of My Labs. My Labs was the first startup which actually got their testing kits in place, and ICMR kind of approved it. They had literally no incubators. They can be called as grassroots innovators. And they were the ones, of course, then we identified them, gave them NCL Pune Venture Network and so on to mentor them and so on. But these are the startups who are working from home, youngsters who are thinking for India. They are not in the government, they are not in any NGO or any academic institute. They are single individual youth coming together with other youth to do something for India. So I think this culture is beautiful and we need to encourage that. Now the second part is that every basket has some bad eggs as well. Startup today has also become a way of making quick money.
Absolutely.
So they come, they take the funds and they disappear. So that is a cause of worry, because then what happens is that the credibility of various good startups which want to do work, we are losing out on that. The third element is that we need to differentiate between startups which are working in deep technology, like you have agriculture technologies, you have drones, you have water technologies, waste management and so on, which are very deep. That means that it needs a lot of long-term patience with these startups, right? We don't have patience.
Absolutely.
That is the biggest problem.
That is it.
And then you have those lighter weight innovations which have a quicker, mostly IT-based or app-based startups. So those startups, again, they make a lot of good amount of money and they move out very fast. But I would also like to end it up by saying something positive, that they are also generating a lot of jobs today. So quite a few startups are generating a lot of jobs, and hence it's very important for us to have a startup ecosystem. And since we are pioneers and from all the countries, I think India is doing the best right now, we need to encourage that. The second question that you asked was, do we have too many incubators? I think we have very less incubators. The point is not the quantity, the point is the quality. Do these incubators have good mentors? Do they have industry veterans in these as mentors? Or are they only theoretical people who are there as mentors because they have something called the sweat equity and so on in the startups? If it is unconditional mentoring that is required for a startup, and if unconditional mentors are there in these incubators, I think the incubators are not sufficient in India. We need to have several more quality incubators.
Quality.
The last point you made was on centralizing all the startups and all the ecosystem. It's like MSMEs, right? My entire worry is that tomorrow these startups should not become MSMEs. They should not die the way MSMEs are struggling, right? So how do we, centralization is great, but do we need to regularize them? Because they are a different set of animals. The generation is different. We need to understand them. We need to give them that freedom. The innovation and creativity that is required in a startup is very different from what it was in the old school thing. So I think centralizing may not be a great idea. This whole startup mission of state governments is something which is decentralized today, and I think that is brilliant. And each state government should work with compete with the other state government to have better funding mechanism, open up to the innovations and startups and so on, and provide good mentors. And there should be evaluation of mentors and so on. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, ma'am. Mentoring, what you said is very, 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 very important. In fact, just to add on to what you said, I was speaking with one of the guys the other day who has just exited from the startup. He's monetized it, sold it away. And I asked him very honestly, I said, why have you done it? You've reached a particular level. You started from TRL1, you reached TRL9, you reached a particular prototype, and now you monetized it and you're moving on. Then where is the institutionalization of the knowledge? Where is the journey? Where is it documented? This, that, and the other. So he said, look, there is a lot of difference between the the startups in India and the startups in the United States. So I asked him explain very briefly. So he says, look, I'm making a particular fuel pump for a particular aircraft, and there's a huge behemoth like Boeing or whatever, anything, and I'm supplying it to him. So at some stage in time, Boeing is not interested in monetizing me and buying me out. I will also grow and Boeing will also grow. So somewhere down the line, this mismatch is happening in India. So possibly we could look at some steps to mitigate this. So it's quite an insight for me the other day. I said, okay, I must look into it a little more deeply and understand what you just mentioned to me. Anyway, I'll come down to Dr. Vijay Lakshmi. Ma'am, agriculture, what a diverse field, from startups to agriculture. It employs around 50%, I think, of the population in India, nearly 50%, if you look at it statistically. And it's a premier, role play in the economy. We like it or we don't like it. Agriculture is the mainstay insofar as the economy is concerned, as we speak today, and thank God for it. But what are the challenges that you feel are there in this sector, and what are the reforms which have been initiated policy-wise in the last around, say, 5-10 years? 10 years, possibly.
As we all know that, agriculture still employs almost 50% of the population and provides livelihoods to large number of people, and also employment opportunities along with it. When all of us, at this juncture recall that how the situation was earlier, from a situation where we were forcefully importing wheat from USA to a situation where we are actually exporting food grain. We have come a long, long way. And, before actually discussing the challenges, let us actually look at the kind of achievements which we could do with the help of technology and all that. So at present, as per the fourth advance estimates of last year, 21-22, the food grain production is now stands at 315 million metric tons, and at the same time, one of the highest so far. And at the same time, the horticulture, the fruits and vegetables production, also stands at almost 342 million metric tons. So this is the kind of achievement we could do, through, of course, lot of technology interventions, etc., etc. We all know about the green revolution, the high yielding varieties, and along with it, all the interventions we could make and all that. So having said that, even after achieving so much, we still have a lot of challenges in the Indian agriculture sector as of today. Because the first and foremost challenge to my mind would be declining workforce in the agriculture sector. So as the economy grows, it's nothing but it's a natural phenomenon that people would tend to move to the secondary and tertiary sectors. So as of now, even though the agriculture employs 50% of the population in the country, it is going to come down to 25%. By 2050. So people are going to move to other sectors. So that is going to impact the way we are going to do agriculture. A lot of mechanization needs, of course, it is being done now, but going forward, we need lot and more, lot of other interventions with regard to how do you actually, replace this kind of workforce when it comes down to 25%. So declining workforce in agriculture sector is going to be the number one challenge. The second challenge would be depletion of per capita availability of water. So the water, we all know that water, agriculture sector uses almost 60 to 70% of total available water on this planet. So how are we going to do actually meet this challenge of making available sufficient water for agriculture? So what are the other alternatives? Because the other large sectors which are going to take up this available water would be the municipalities, a lot of municipalities, the urban bodies and industry. They are going to take up the major share of water. So how do we actually look at water availability for agriculture sector? That is going to be second biggest challenge, even though now we have a lot of irrigation facilities and all that. So how do we actually use water in a much more efficient way, especially using water which is already used. So reusing water for agriculture sector is going to be the next innovation in this particular sphere. This is second biggest challenge. The third biggest challenge would be the low productivity. Even though we have achieved so much in terms of production, productivity wise we are still if you actually look at the global benchmarks, we are still little 20 to 25% less than the global benchmarks. So having said that, we have improved tremendously in the last decade in terms of productivity. If you actually see, I have some data on that. If you actually see the increase in productivity, in paddy, we have improved in the last decade. We have improved 16.27%. Productivity.
That's very big.
That's very big. In wheat, almost 12%, and in maize, it's very high. It's 25%. Productivity improvement. Likewise, in coarse cereals, 30% we have improved in terms of productivity. So. There have been a lot of efforts to improve productivity, but still, with regard to global benchmarks, we are still low. So the third biggest challenge would be how do we actually increase productivity, because as we grow in terms of population, the land mass is still, it's the same, but population is increasing. So with the declining land to man ratio, we have to actually increase the productivity. So that is the third biggest challenge, which I see. The fourth one is how do we actually employ, technology to improve, productivity, to improve efficiency and all that. So, and the fourth biggest challenge would be how do we actually, use waste, agri-waste. So we actually see a lot of issues with regard to the crop residue management, all the pollution related issues and all that which are coming up. So in fact in India agriculture sector alone generates 350 million tons of waste every year. So now we are talking about the circular economy and using waste efficiently so that also becomes productive. So using agri waste would be the fourth biggest challenge. The fifth biggest challenge would be the climate change. We talk about it a lot these days, and we all know that 1 degree temperature variation can impact the production of food grains so much. So recently we also had little bit of raise in temperature in the month of February and March, the wheat production goes down. So that is the kind of impact which the climate is going to have, the unforeseen floods and raise in temperatures and all that. So how are we actually going to cope up with the climate change and all that revolves around climate change issues, in terms of productivity of not only food grains but also productivity of livestock and all related issues. So climate change is going to be the biggest challenge, the fifth biggest challenge. And the sixth biggest challenge I see is the fodder. So the area under fodder is going down year by year. So how do we actually look at increasing fodder production so that we also improve productivity of livestock, be it milk, meat and all other things. So that is another issue, and we are also looking at a lot of other issues which are interlinked with each other, that is called as One Health. So how do we actually, even though it is not directly linked to the agriculture sector, but there are so many other interlinkages. There we actually call everything is like Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, is that the One Health concept. Once we actually look at One Health as the single most important factor determining so many other issues on this planet. So we actually have that kind of a focused approach towards the plant health intertwined with the microbial health and other the microbes and parasites, and also the animal health, and then the human health. So plant health, animal health and human health, all these three are intertwined and interlinked with each other so much that we had the recent COVID pandemic was just an example. case in point. So One Health is very, very important, and it is going to be the biggest challenge and biggest opportunity also to actually look at issues and come up with a lot of interventions and the reorientation in terms of how we think, the policy approaches and all that. So these are some of the challenges which come to my mind.
Great. Sure. Thank you, ma'am. I think I'll recapitulate by saying declining water to start with. I think personally, if you ask me, not as a moderator, but if you ask me as a uniformed man much earlier, I am quite convinced that all wars in the future are going to be fought only over water. So that is a reality, and that's the way it's panning out also as well. Then the second thing which you mentioned is, of course, the labor force, which is declining. I just hope it only goes into manufacturing and not only service sector. I really hope so, because if you're looking at 25% till 2050, and it only goes back into service sector and more service sector, I think it's again going to be a skewed problem at some stage in time. The third thing which you mentioned is, of course, low productivity, agri-waste, climate change, of course. We have Professor Chhatre here, climate change as it is, he's the master. And Anjal also, both of us, they've taught us, in fact, they are gurus, they've taught me agri stuff, the forest economies and all these issues. I think they are very, very important point. Of course, One Health, and the last one which you mentioned is technology. I think that is going to be the game changer insofar as agriculture is concerned. So not as a tech guy now, who's looking after chips, but I think we'll come more onto it in the next session when I ask you as to how exactly the technology is going to be coming in. Anamika, I now come to you. So the first question which I want to ask you is that you look after all grassroots innovations as Gyan, as CEO of Gyan, and grassroots innovations have their own issues of skill sets, they have own issues of people who have the educational thresholds, so on and so forth. Having said that, what do you think are the policy gaps which exist as we speak to hinder the growth or progress in this domain today?
Very interesting. So let me give you a kind of a taste of it. If I start speaking in Bengali, not like how are you, but just telling you कि अपनी निजेर जे ये आचे idea आचे सेगलो अपनी आमाके देन, and then I ask you different questions, right? So I speak a language which you do not speak.
Okay.
When I am asking for nominations, I'm asking for startups. My people, they cannot, many of them cannot read and write proper even vernacular languages.
Oh.
Most of the calls are in English and sometimes Hindi, right? But with so much of diversity of course, language, dialects, and the economic pyramid, many of our startups or many of our innovators cannot reach to, as you said, there are many incubators in the country. Those many incubators, everybody, they are kind of trying to maybe fulfill a gap in their own way. But when it comes to grassroots technologies, we need to communicate in a language, in a manner that they understand. Unka kaam tha innovation karna, and they did it well. And then there is a full stop. Then it comes to us, maybe the the intermediary organizations, the incubators, the government policies, to take them up from there. So first is, can we have these calls in not only print media, but also in other media, maybe in terms of small video or a small podcast or small audio, or in a language which can be, which can be translated into the regional languages, not only the state languages, but other regional languages. So that the inflow of technologies is not limited. आप वहाँ तक पहुँच नहीं रहे हैं, वो problem हमें solve करना है. Not because those technologies are not relevant. The technologies may be relevant. They might be able to address some of the challenges that the incubators have issued or the government is looking at, but they may not be able to articulate or come to you in a way that you want to. Secondly, the databases. If you see, we have also built many databases, some are multilingual, but again language becomes a problem. Second is the accessibility. If we do not make it accessible, then why have databases, right? तो जहाँ पे मुझे एक सब्सक्रिप्शन फी देना पड़े, सपोज आई एम एन इनोवेटर, कैन देयर बी अ पॉलिसी वेयर लाइक जब DPIIT में हम लोग रजिस्टर करते हैं, व्हेन वी गेट अ रजिस्ट्रेशन डन and they say कि okay these are the libraries from where you can access. Now again people will say कि grassroots innovators how will they access, why will they access libraries, but we also ask our students to help them. Students collaborate with them and kind of try to refine these ideas, the prototypes into a workable product. Then comes the stage which is a very crucial one, is validation and value addition. आप भी ऐसा कोई भी चीज, or you will, any one of us will not use anything that has not been scientifically validated. That is the truth, because we are educated and we feel कि कोई भी मतलब there has to be a demarcation from superstition and traditional knowledge or grassroots innovation. There, our labs, like I also happen to teach at ACSR, the Academy for Scientific, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, where each lab is working into the industrial problems. Now, can we have a budget earmarked from these labs, in these labs, who will work on the local problems and the innovators who have come to a solution of a local problem. Now, we don't have such mandates. We don't have mandates in even agriculture universities whose work is to go to the people and find out the problems, find out the solutions, scale them up, right? So that is another thing. Some of them are very, you can say, they need a lot of value addition. जैसे दवाई का active ingredient अगर आपको दे दिया जाए, you will not be able to consume, right? So people mix it with different things so that it is palatable. So similarly, there are innovations which need a lot of value addition. Can we have something to meet that gap? Then comes to financing. Most of them, some of the schemes have grants, some are loans, and some are debt, right? Equity and debt financing. एक जगह पे grassroots innovators के लिए नहीं होता है. We don't have it at one place for the grassroots innovators. Now, some like as you said that many are working in silos. Some are giving grants. So grant is useful when an idea is taking shape and the innovator does not have to invest his own money, his or her own money, to get into a prototype or a working proof of concept stage, right? But once the innovator is now pilot testing, first is pilot testing के लिए there is no program. You need large scale multi-location pilot testing because many of these technologies are again rural based or agriculture based.
This is, I think it's a common issue with everyone.
Yes, and that is not only,
In the entire
yes, not only grassroots innovation but any innovation. Startups के पास pilot testing के लिए funds नहीं होते हैं. They do not have a window where, okay, I want to make 500 pieces, get them tested in all the locations or maybe in all the states so that I understand where my market lies.
True.
Unless, देखो और एक चीज होता है वो कहते हैं ना जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. Unless people see it, people see their efficacy, their efficiency, they will not buy it, right? So people have money. It's not that they don't want to buy, but are we giving these grassroots innovators or other innovators that chance to showcase their technology in a much larger geography than we are limited to? So there are several, like another thing that I wanted to take up was micro venture innovation fund. We have microfinance. And of course, if you know, the percentage is quite high in that, the interest rates. But can we give small soft loans where people who have at least started the market and now they need again for the pilot or just to scale them up at a very nominal rate of interest, and with the understanding that if they have tried everything, if they have burned out everything, then it can be translated into a grant or something else. So that is a risk or a venture finance where you are you know the risk associated and you are still willing to try. And we have found that we had in the last round actually more than 75% of the funds we got back. So it is not a bad game if you see in the banking sector. It is much higher than what the banks get their returns on, right? So some financial instruments, some technological instruments, and I think we will be there someday.
All right. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. So I'll recapitulate the importance of linguistics, the multi-linguistic issue which is required. The second is, of course, databases. You have the Indian data portal started by the Indian School of Business. I really don't understand why people have hegemony over data. I don't know why they keep sitting on data. For what reason, I have no understanding. The third issue is of microfinancing. I mean, you have a success story in the neighborhood. I don't need to go far. Bangladesh and Grameen Bank. I don't need to go very
But
far.
here, you know, in
पुराना हो
microfinance,
गया।
the market and the product is known.
बहुत पुराना हो
In
गया।
micro venture finance, the market is not known.
Okay.
So वहाँ पे एक risk है. So, and I think as they have taken pioneering work in that, we should do it in MVIF.
Correct.
We should go one step ahead
of that.
what our neighbors have done.
True that. And of course, you have the pilot stage issues, which is quite well known to everybody. I think it is across the board. It is a problem there. So I'll come to Dr. Sapna now, back again. And ma'am, there are a large number of, seed funding schemes insofar as startups are concerned. By the government, by the corporates, so on and so forth. Do you think they're all right? Are the policies which are governing them, are they all right? And do you think there should be more CSR or other grants which should come into play to fund these guys at a very inception stage so that they take it up from wherever they have to go in the technology ready lists to wherever they have to reach to the prototype stage?
Yeah. So I think here maybe an example of what we have tried out last couple of years might be interesting. We have set up about 15 centers of excellence in different institutes, right from TERI to IIT Palakkad to IIT Dharwad and some lesser known IITs and NITs, because I don't think everything should go to those 5 IITs. They are flushed with funds. So in these centers of excellence, we have looked at 4 pillars largely. The first pillar being largely research and pre-incubation stage of innovation development. So that is one pillar where you work on everything from idea stage to say TRL 3 or TRL 4. The second one is incubation of startups, and the incubator is the second pillar in a center of excellence. The third one is the pilot, which he was talking about in terms of how to support startups on the entire pilot stage. And the fourth one is scaling up. And in this center of excellence, we insist that the line ministry, be it MAUA, be it Ministry of Agriculture, whichever is the relevant line ministry, has a representative in that governing council. Why? Because it should not be a surprise to the line ministry that here's a center of excellence which has these many startups, and they are working on some innovations which are relevant or not relevant. They come to know after the whole journey is over. So that is why the government is part of this center of excellence. It is housed in a premier institute so that we know the funds are not going anywhere else. And it has startups, and those startup cohorts can be from anywhere. They don't need to be IITians or NITs or anything. They can be from anywhere. They could be grassroots or whatever. So this center of excellence that we set up, 15 of them, sanitation is in IIT Palakkad, renewable energy in IIT Dharwad, we have geospatial, we have AI and ML in NIT Patna, and then we have TERI has circular economy and so on. So we have developed so many of them. Each of these are through funding from different corporates largely. So it's HDFC Bank, Infineon, Honeywell, ICICI Securities, ICICI Foundation, IBM, and then we have Gates Foundation and so on. So we have sourced all of them. My division basically and my team, I have an excellent team, and they have sourced these partners for each of these centers of excellence. So the whole idea is how do we help these startups at different levels and these 4 pillars, and the seed funding goes as per this, right? And there could be corporates which are interested or funders which are interested in one particular pillar only. For instance, Gates says, I'm interested post-pilot. Or HDFC Bank says, who is going to fund pre-incubation research stage, which has 70% failures? So I will fund that, So I'm just giving you examples of how funding can be distributed. Rather than putting everything, every energy into one thing, saying that, okay, now we fund, seed funding, and then there's startups, and then somehow we get something out of it, the entire chain. Focused funding, and with that, mentorship of that particular organization makes a difference, because then they come with their entire force saying that this is the fund and this is us coming behind it and helping the startups in these areas. That's what works beautifully. And I really don't believe in 18,000 crores, 30,000 crores. I get very worried when I see big numbers, because I feel nothing will come on the ground. I prefer a 10 crore which goes on the ground rather than 30,000 crores which we are talking on the paper.
I think you're spot on. But in the same breath, if you look at the model of, say, software technology parks of India, the STPI and stuff like that. Now I'm again going into tech, because willy-nilly you venture back into your own domain, and you have the Startup Seed Fund of India, so on and so forth. Do you think as a policy we could, possibly telescope or shorten those processes? There are too many processes that a young mind, a 23, 24, 25, 26-year-old guy, is fresh out of the engineering school or a B school, wants to create something and he wants a seed funding. But there's so many processes, starting from form filling to, A, B, C, and D. Can they be curtailed, or it's all right, ma'am, in your view?
So I think anything to do with government, we have too many regulations. So we need to, that's why untied funds from industry, and that's why we, in fact, from the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor, we introduced two clauses in the Schedule 7 of Ministry of Corporate Affairs for CSR. That is funding towards research and funding towards incubation of startups. Okay. So the whole idea was untied funds come from these. And also, of course, there are organizations like, informal groups like ACT Grants, Catalyst Group in Bangalore, and so on. There are several of them. I think money is not an issue at all. But just waiting for government funds all the time is quite unfair, because I think government has already funded all the institutes. Quite. The largest labs, the equipments, everything. Now is the time for a return back. Yes. So how about returning through these and also doing problems, research problems, or specific solutions for such social impact through industry funding or through untied funds.
Okay. Exactly, ma'am. I think that's the way forward. I think what you said is the pillars of pre-incubation, the incubators, support, and scalability. I think if you focus on these four issues, I think your startups will be good. Thank you, ma'am. So I come back to Dr. Vijay Lakshmi and leave where I left, back into the technology domain. So what do you think in agri sector, ma'am, are the emerging technologies which are going to be mitigating a huge amount of issues? And how will they aid in decision making and policy design of the future?
Okay. Yeah. Agriculture is nothing but technology, okay, if I may say so. Because externally, if you see as a layman, एक दृश्य हमारे सामने आता है कि एक गरीब किसान सीड बो रहा है या क्रॉप हार्वेस्ट कर रहा है. But that is not the case. Agriculture is 100% technology. So how we have actually achieved the kind of food surplus or food security today is due to technology. Our scientists are every year they are taking out thousands of varieties of the improved varieties of seeds. So if you actually see in the business terminology, we say the input, throughput, and output. So it's exactly the same in agriculture. Starting from the input to throughput, input, the seed, to the crop, to harvest, to post-harvest, to warehousing, up to consumption and then exports. So the entire value chain is nothing but technology driven. So if you see, at the seed stage, we have thousands of new varieties now. We have improved variety, the high HYV seeds. We know very well about how they have actually completely changed the agriculture scenario by bringing about green revolution. So after HYV, we have lot many experiments done, and then we have now GM crops, genetically modified, gene edited crops, and DNA sequencing is also happening. So we're actually producing so many thousands of new improved varieties every year in all kinds of crops. So improved varieties of planting material in horticulture crops. So this is happening. at the seed level. And then come to the next level, at the crop level. So for the crops to grow, you need a lot of inputs, not only seed, but you also need fertilizers. So we think about fertilizers. Earlier we used to think fertilizer मतलब एक दृश्य फिर सामने आता है हमारा visuals कि किसान ऐसा छिड़काव कर रहा है. Whenever you think about fertilizers, this comes into into your mind. But who thought that fertilizers also can be in liquid form? So that was a breathtaking technology which actually enabled fertigation. So which in fact has enabled the micro irrigation to come into picture, and through micro irrigation then a lot of other improvements have come into place. So fertilizers in terms of liquid fertilizers. Now we are talking about nano urea, nano fertilizers using nanotechnology, using less amount of fertilizer and having more absorption capacity of that fertilizer, and slow releasing fertilizers. So you name it, you have so many varieties now available for the farmers in terms of technology in fertilizers. So that is with regard to fertilizers. Then you actually think about how we are actually looking at the entire farm. When this farm requires water, when this farm requires fertilizer, when there is a pest or a disease, how do you actually, without even going into the farm, how do you actually know about what kind of disease is there and what kind of application is required? So all that is being done through sensors now. So we have actually gone to that level of farming now, that the young entrepreneurs in this country are using sensors and doing all these applications in the farm sector. So it's nothing but technology. Then come to the next level, harvest. There are so many, like I just forgot to mention about drones. So recently we have introduced drones, and the SOPs are also given, and people are using drone technology now for various kinds of applications. So that is actually helping farmers and entrepreneurs in a similar way to reduce costs, to increase productivity, and many things. So the drone technology is now it is the in thing now. So, and then look at the harvesting, you have combined harvesters and whatnot in terms of mechanization. Agriculture mechanization, we have gone from smallest to the largest equipment, and what kind, all kinds of equipments are there now. People are in fact have custom hiring centers, in all the villages, self-help groups coming together, the farmer producer organizations coming together, having custom hiring centers, and then, distributing these and, providing these equipments on rent, etc., etc. So this is nothing but technology. So post-harvest, you have so many technologies in the post-harvest, warehousing, warehousing related technologies. So we have everything now. So it is in a conventional way, from seed to post-harvest, it's all technology driven. Now we have gone ahead, and now we are actually entering into the new and emerging technologies in terms of AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, and sensor-based technology, remote sensing, technology, all that we are using now. So it's all technology and technology only.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's hope more power to you all in using technology. I think with the passage of time, I am left with one last question to you, Anamika, and I'll ask you very pointed question insofar as the grassroots innovations is concerned and the sector that you are working in. What are your views on the current scraping policy? That is one. And the second thing is, how does it affect your area? And the second moot part of the question is, do you think a larger amount of CSR will drive more innovation in this area? And if yes, how?
First, the scraping policy.
Yeah.
It will kind of kill our grassroots innovators in some sense, because they keep the cost low because they use second-hand parts. Now, when you drive a car, the car maybe they have an age, the cars have an age of 15 years, 20 years. But what about the steering? What about the differential? What about the different alloys that is being used? Kuch part, maybe the electronics part may get hampered, But when we have so much of focus on circular economy, how can we make it into thin sheets and let it go? I mean, that has happened in Europe. Of course, they may have a reason for that, but here a whole industry thrives on it. And I will say, with the additional part of the scrapping industry should be multiple life cycles, fatigue factors mentioned on the components, right? Because many of आप अगर देखोगे बहुत जो ये आप scrap industry बोलते हैं, they salvage most of the components, they get
Correct.
value out of something that we have thrown away.
Correct.
And that's why the whole cost of R&D, if you see, the cheapest way of generating employment in this country is through grassroots innovations. Because the cost of R&D, they have, because of the limited constraint, limited resources, the constraints they emerge in, they have kept it very low. Now, such kind of policy should be maybe reviewed in the sense of our more, like our commitment towards the SDGs, where we have committed that we will work towards circular economy, where we are reducing the carbon footprint, where we are saying we are kind of working towards helping the industry grow, but not at the cost of environment. The more consumptive we are, the more problem we are creating. Second part of the question was CSR. See, at times it is the more the merrier, but CSR could be also in form of the expertise that they have. Like right now we have a collaboration with Suzuki. Why? Because not only for the money we are getting from others also, but our people will never get an expertise of a Suzuki engineer or a Microsoft engineer. They will never get access. वो कभी जो 10th तक पास भी नहीं किए हैं, how will enter your door, right? So CSR, the whole paradigm can be, as Madam had also explained, mentorship also matters, along with, of course, financing instruments are there, but finances have to be backed up with right kind of policies at right stages, as she said, from a pre-incubation to scale-up version, when the innovations scale up. So I will say that CSR, currently it is like 2% or whatever it is. Now more and more people are being involved. And what I like currently, many of the corporates are coming up to devote their time also. एक चीज होता है आपने इधर से दे दिया and let it be. My balance sheet is okay, my taxes have been met, and my legal criteria I have fulfilled. But when I am involved, maybe I can bring more. एक concept होता है cognitive surplus, which every one of us have.
Yes. That is the point I was trying to make,
Yes.
because it is not a dole.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it is also ownership.
Yes, because हम लोग में हर किसी में we are somehow multi-talented, and we like to do something which is outside our domain of work, and we can bring passion into it, and we can bring more energy into it. So we can see CSR in that light also, how each of us can contribute not only in terms of money, but also expertise, interest, mentorship, networks. I come from the Honeybee network. It is the largest network in the form of like an informal network, जहाँ पे कोई certificate नहीं है, only the logo is registered, nothing else. But people are there. You ask to find out about any innovator in the country, our people will be able to reach there, because they are we are united by a cause. We say we want to help grassroots innovators, or we want to help innovators. Let it be grassroots innovators, and somebody will go and reach and get the information.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anamika. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've come to the end of this session. I will stick to the time allocated to me very clearly. To just sum it up a little, we've had some great insights into the strategic alliances in the startup system insofar as the principle of scientific advisor to the PM is concerned by Dr. Sapna Poti. She's brought out 4 pillars very clearly of the pre-incubation stage, incubation stage, and thereafter, hand-holding and scalability, which obviously is going to make a business sense. If you don't have scalability, then what business sense are you doing? I mean, it doesn't stand to logic either which way.
Yeah.
And of course, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi, she's brought about the technology in agriculture, policy reforms, various touch points which she just mentioned as to what is required and how important is policy insofar as agriculture is concerned. Anamika has spoken a lot about the grassroots sector, the scraping policy, the issues with the scraping policy, CSR, various other issues of multilinguistics, etc., etc. As closing remarks, we as a country, a lot of people have a lot of things to say about India. You're very big, you're very humongous, you are technology centric, but how will you do it, this, that and the other. So there are a lot of people who speak like this. My favorite quote whenever I speak in various public appearances is I always say that India is a country which has a capability to disappoint both the optimist and the pessimist alike. So make no mistake, you have arrived. In 75 years, what you have done, frankly, as a country, I feel very proud when I go around all over in the ecosystem and see young minds talking, doing things, ideating, envisioning things as to how they're going to be coming through today. And both sides of the fence, the government sector, now in the corporate sector, I think this country has some great potential, outstanding potential. So I'm sure it will not disappoint the optimist insofar as that is concerned. The second thing is that there are some gaps. Policy may be on one end, but there are some gaps which possibly would hamper you not, capitalizing or encashing your demographic dividend, so to say, as a lot of people, articulate it as compared to China or Europe or whichever country you're looking at. I think the biggest gap which exists as we speak today, even for Atmanirbhar Bharat and even for technology, is skilling. I'm quite convinced about it. So insofar as my sector is concerned today, when you look at semiconductors, when you look at the various pillars of skilling, I mean, you can put in so much of money that you want, you can put in anything. And now we've seen post the vaccines, you've seen the entire drama unfolding after this COVID, when the vaccines came into play, and they were weaponized, really. They were weaponized by various countries. Your co-vaccine and things like that, they didn't get the WHO nod and so on and so forth. So at some stage, there may be a case in point and time when there will be countries who will monetize this skilling part. They will make it at a premium. So it is high time that the core of Atmanirbhar Bharat is taken as skilling, and then we move forward insofar as we are concerned. I think I have finished with this. We are still open to questions, all four of us. We have around 3.5 minutes more. We'll be more than happy to take the questions. Semiconductors for me, strategic alliances for Dr. Sapna Poti, anything on agriculture by Dr. Vijay Lakshmi, and Anamika, of course, for the grassroots sector, please. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I am Lalmani Pandey from ISB. I would like to ask Dr. Vijay Lakshmi that, ma'am, you have highlighted so many challenges. Of course, government is also doing best to tackle those challenges. I wish to know more about what government currently doing to attract quality graduates in agriculture.
Quality graduates?
Yeah, graduates, young minds, quality graduates, including startups and maybe innovations. If you could highlight more schemes, then it will help me. Thank you.
Shall I take it up? Shall I answer? Okay. Yeah. Ministry of Agriculture has already, nurtured almost 1,100 startups in agri sector, and there are almost 15 knowledge partners, and there are almost 10 to 15 rabis who are actually incubating these ideas and nurturing them. So 1,100 startups are ready, and there are few more, in the pipeline, and altogether like 1,500 to 1,600 startups are now, ready to take off. So that is one thing. And if you actually see the startup innovation plus ag tech business, it has actually grown 25% year on year. So that is the kind of growth which is happening in the ag tech sector and startup and innovation sector. So you see every day a new entrepreneur coming up, and since agriculture sector is so huge, as I said, from seed to post-harvest. So, in the entire value chain, you take up any small bit and do so much. So many young people are actually entering agriculture sector. Lot of IIT graduates, IM graduates, entering agriculture and doing wonderfully well. So there are so many, startups. They have just started like 4 or 5 years ago. Now, like 1,000 crore companies they have built up. So that is the kind of scenario which is now happening.
If I can add to that, we've done something called the Kisan Mitra initiative, where we have about 2,000 plus technologies and startups in this platform called Kisan Mitra, and it's with the Prime Minister's Science Technology Innovation Cluster in Hyderabad now. We have just placed it there. So I think most startups today are interested in agriculture, and right from small land holding mechanization to drones, several areas.
Yeah.
You'll find.
25% growth year on year itself is so huge. In fact, in the ministry, what we are doing now is that we are actually making agriculture pilgrimage centers. So, if institutes like ISB or IITs, IIMs, if they are interested, we can share that list. Where they can send their students for exposure visits, etc. So these agriculture pilgrimage centers are for us, for ministry officials, starting from the ASO level up to the secretary, to go visit them and learn from them what they are doing, and also encourage them, things like that. So,
In fact, one of our IMA graduates, she is putting her, donning the hat of entrepreneurship. She is doing this agriculture, you can say pilgrimage, but we say tourism in West Sikkim, one of the cornermost part of Sikkim, and that is happening. It is naturally happening with all the impetus and force na कि अभी startup करना है, नया सोचना है, and people are now excited. And see, they may fail, but they are at least trying. We should be happy that they are honestly trying.
Failure is a part.
Yes.
Failure is a part of your progress. That's all right. In fact, as we speak, there is also a startup that I am handling. They are using artificial intelligence to make a couple of devices which you can put in the food storage godowns to look at rodents, vermins, how the grains are going to be performing at a particular time and space. So that also is on.
Ag tourism is also picking up, agriculture tourism, and people are actually setting up restaurants in their farms, and
Farm to plate.
Farm to plate, and freshly picked up, vegetables and cooked, and then they are serving the food in the farm itself. So ag tourism is really picking up.
Yes, sir.
Good morning to all the panelists. Let me start by first congratulating Anamika ma'am, Sapna ma'am, and the whole ecosystem stakeholders to where we have arrived so far, as sir also mentioned. Can we have an applause for what we are doing collectively as India? Because I've been following Jian, I've been following Professor Anil Gupta, Shodh Yatra, and how he is trying to connect the frugal innovations, and people like him, are inspiring a new generation. He has been he had worked with Dr. Kalam. For me also, he was an inspiration. After graduation, I also kind of took up a entrepreneurial route. One aspect which, I would like to ask is the role of gap between the education process. We all are still thinking the linear way. After 12th, you have, other module, next module, and I have been interacting with some of the participants also over here who are pursuing PhD, that, there is no space between to think. I met some Korean students during my visit to Udaipur in 2018. And these kids were just 12 pass outs, and they took 1 year off to travel India to explore the challenges, maybe, similar condition we can find in Israel. The students take part in the military training or whatever, and then they go back to the education, and it's very much accepted by the society over there. Like, it's kind of part of the culture to become innovative. What are your thoughts on this? Can something like this, like Shodh Yatra for a year, Jagriti Yatra is there, and many other initiatives are there. Can we give some space to the students to think, pause, channelize us thoughts early that what I really want to do? Because I have my friends and colleagues who did engineering, telecom, now they are working in IT. I don't know what happened over there at that time. So it would be great to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, very relevant question. But the new education policy, get a copy and you will know that the government is taking care of that. Where you can take a sabbatical like professionals can do, and even between your degrees, like between your semesters, you can take off and do something worthwhile. Now what you do out of it is upon you, right? So the policy is, and now it is being implemented, so give it some time. Maybe in some time you will have it in all across in all universities and all, but the policy is in place, right?
Yeah,
yes.
With respect to that, but I have been interacting with some institutions. They are little bit so vague as to where, in metros, Tier 1, Tier 2, how it is going to be formulated or implemented in that sense. Like
Rome wasn't built in a day. It'll take a while.
It will
right?
take a while,
So-
but again, as Colonel Awasthi has said, it will give food to the optimists and the pessimists alike. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, but
but they are necessary. I will say an early stage awareness, an early stage exposure to various things is important. And one of the things that we usually do is we take children from the poorest backgrounds and the most elitist school together. We make them go to places where people who work with hands, like the laborers or the artisans, they live. They come and ideate and see the problems and give solutions as well. So getting exposure is upon not only, the onus is not only on the institutions or your parents or your teachers, but also the students themselves. And I think in some time it will change.
It will.
It will change.
It will change. And see, I'll just, as the closing remarks, I'll also just mention to you, since you brought out this issue, and I also mentioned about skilling. Now let me tell you about the semiconductor policies in India. The other day we were ideating in the ministry, with a lot of people, a lot of erudite speakers, a lot of industry professionals, leaders, captains, so on and so forth. Now you give me a case in point. You have a child today, and he says that, okay, I want to do engineering after 12th. Which engineering do you think he'll do? Take a cross section, 85% computer science. So computer science तुम करोगे तो फिर hardware कहाँ से बनाओगे? But he's not at fault. The problem is there's a return on investment on him, because there are Googles and Microsofts roaming around the place. They'll give him a good job. If he's going to do electronics and microelectronics, where are the jobs? So the crux, the core lies in skilling. So what you will do is that you will get people from outside at 8 times the cost. And they will supposedly, apparently train you. Whether they do or not is a moot question. See, that is what she just mentioned. The NEP is going to be a game changer. Will take a little while. But a great question. Thank you very much.
It's all about mindset, no?
Mindset and
We are-
culture.
And
culture.
as a country, we are actually transitioning. And Indian parents earlier used to be very, very insecure about their kids getting into,
Business and entrepreneurship.
yes, they should get some job. So that is why all doctor, engineer kind of theory earlier. And after economic reforms only, we have little slightly opened up. Now only we are actually having a lot of opportunities. So things are happening, and many kids are now actually taking sabbatical after their graduation and going around and then only taking up some job or the other. So things are happening and changing.
So I've already got a chit which says, sir, scheduled time is just over. Right, thank you very much for your patient listening, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much to the panelists. You've been great, very, very forthcoming and very upright in speaking. And thank you very much to Bharati Institute of Public Policy and the Indian School of Business for hosting us and letting us speak and giving us the platform to speak on these issues. Thank you very much. Have a great day.